A thief robs an elderly woman in the subway, completely unaware that Keanu Reeves is watching. The Utica Avenue subway station buzzed with the frenetic energy of New York City's evening rush hour. Hundreds of commuters swarmed through the station, their footsteps echoing off the tiled walls as they hurried to catch their trains. Amidst this sea of rushing bodies, Mildred Howell, a woman in her mid-70s, moved with painstaking slowness. Her aged frame struggled against the current of humanity, each step a deliberate act of will. Mildred's eyes darted anxiously to her wristwatch, its face reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. Time was slipping away, and with it, her chance to make it to the memorial service on time. She clutched her purse tightly, its familiar weight a small comfort in the chaos surrounding her. As she approached the subway pass gate, Mildred's heart began to race. She fumbled through her wallet, panic rising in her chest as she searched for her Metro card. "I know it's here somewhere," she muttered to herself, methodically checking each pocket of her purse. The line behind her grew, impatience radiating from those waiting. Just as despair began to set in, Mildred's fingers brushed against something in her pants pocket. Relief washed over her as she pulled out the Metro card, remembering how she had hastily slipped it there that morning in her rush to work. "Finally," she sighed, swiping the card through the reader. The gate beeped and opened, but her moment of relief was short-lived. Irritated commuters pushed past her, their shoulders jostling her as they rushed through the now open gate. I'm sorry," Mildred called out, but her words were lost in the din of the station. A gruff voice cut through the noise, a guard gesturing impatiently. "Move along, ma'am, keep the line moving." Chastened, Mildred shuffled towards Platform 1, where the Manhattan-bound A train would arrive. The digital display showed a 5-minute wait time. She pulled out her phone, squinting at the bright screen to read a message from her church friend about meeting at Broadway Lafayette Street Station. With shaky fingers, Mildred typed out a reply. "At Utica Avenue now. Train coming soon. Should arrive at Broadway Lafayette in about 30 minutes. Her friend's quick, "See you soon," brought a small smile to Mildred's face as she tucked the phone back into her bag. The nearby monitor now showed just 2 minutes until the train's arrival. Mildred could hear the distant rumble growing louder, feel the subtle vibration through the platform beneath her feet. As she waited, her mind drifted to the purpose of tonight's journey, the memorial service for her late husband, Thomas Howell. 50 years of marriage, half a century of shared dreams, laughter, and tears. And now, on what should have been their golden anniversary, Mildred was preparing to donate Thomas's belongings to a charity auction. The weight of his absence pressed down on her, heavier than any physical burden she'd ever carried. Unbidden, memories of Thomas's final days flooded her mind. The mundane task of changing their car's oil in the garage, the sickening thud as he fell, the frantic rush to the hospital, only to learn of burst brain aneurysms, causing internal bleeding and dangerous pressure. 3 days of agonizing vigil by his bedside, hope fading with each passing hour until that final terrible moment when the machines fell silent. The train's horn pierced through Mildred's reverie, jolting her back to the present. She blinked away the moisture gathering in her eyes as the silver cars screeched to a halt before her. The doors slid open with a hiss, and Mildred waited patiently for the departing passengers to exit. Only then did she step inside, her eyes scanning for an available seat. Finding an empty spot in the back section of the car, Mildred eased herself down with a quiet groan. The familiar automated announcement echoed through the station. "Please stand clear of the closing doors. Mind the gap between the train and the platform." As the doors closed and the train lurched into motion, Mildred closed her eyes for a moment. The rhythmic clacking of wheels on tracks provided a soothing counterpoint to the chaotic thoughts swirling in her mind. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the emotional journey ahead. As the A train pulled away from Utica Avenue, another passenger slipped quietly into the car. Dressed in common clothes, faded jeans, a well-worn shirt, and an old blazer, he blended seamlessly with the crowd of ordinary commuters. Yet this was no ordinary passenger. It was Keanu Reeves, a Hollywood star and beloved cultural icon who remain incognito. Keanu's eyes scanned the crowded car, searching for an available seat. His gaze fell on an empty spot across from an elderly woman. Mildred, though he didn't know her name yet, Something about her reminded him of his late grandmother, a pang of nostalgia tugging at his heart. As he settled into the seat, Keanu offered Mildred a quick, gentle smile. She didn't seem to recognize him, which was precisely what he hoped for. The train car buzzed softly with the low murmur of conversations and the occasional chime of a phone notification. Keanu retrieved his own phone, glancing at a message from his assistant about tonight's mentoring session at the Manhattan Theatre Company. He sat hunched forward, his posture concealing the full expression on his face. "Already on the train," he typed back. "Will arrive on time." After sending the message, a flicker of curiosity prompted him to open a news app. The headlines that flashed across the screen sent a chill coursing through him. "String of subway robberies continues to plague Manhattan." Keanu's eyes flicked upward, scanning his fellow passengers with a newfound sense of caution. All he saw, however, were the weary, unguarded faces of everyday New Yorkers, each absorbed in their own world after a long day's work. No one seemed to take any notice of him, a fact that was both reassuring and, given the headlines he'd just read, faintly unsettling. The train continued its rhythmic journey, stopping at station after station as passengers flowed in and out in a seamless choreography of urban routine. Across from him, an older woman, Mildred, according to the name embroidered on her work uniform, began to nod off, her head dipping with the weight of exhaustion. Keanu's gaze shifted to a crumpled newspaper, left abandoned on the seat beside him. He picked it up, eager for a distraction to quell the unease building in his chest. As Keanu unfolded the newspaper, the front-page headline echoed the digital report he'd just seen. "Subway bandit still at large." His brow creased as he scanned the details of the recent crimes, each line pulling his thoughts deeper into unease. The bold accounts of swift, calculated thefts sent his mind racing with possibilities. Could the culprit be here, riding this very train? The thought sent a ripple of tension through him, and his eyes once again swept over the carriage, searching for anything or anyone out of place. As the train slowed to a halt, the familiar rhythm of the commute played out. Passengers shuffled toward the doors, spilling onto the platform while others filed in, vying for seats or steady footholds. Keanu leaned back in his seat, the newspaper covering parts of his face, his expression carefully composed. Yet his eyes told a different story. He scanned the faces of those boarding, taking in the hurried steps of a young mother wrestling with a stroller, the carefree chatter of two teenagers engrossed in their own world, and the deliberate strides of an older man clutching a worn briefcase. Each figure appeared unremarkable at first glance, but Keanu's sharpened awareness refused to let him overlook even the smallest detail. The train jolted forward, its rhythmic hum returning as it sped toward the next station. Keanu's gaze darted subtly from one passenger to another, careful to maintain a candid demeanor. The stops blurred together as people ebbed and flowed, each arrival and departure feeding his growing sense of vigilance. At the fourth stop, a man in a black hoodie stepped in, his head slightly bowed, and positioned himself near the door. His hood cast a shadow over his face, and he seemed absorbed in his phone, tapping at the screen with mechanical precision. He gave no indication of noticing anyone around him, nor did he draw attention from the other passengers. Still, something about him set Keanu on edge. His movements were too controlled, his stillness just a touch too deliberate. Keanu found himself stealing glances, studying the man's posture and scanning for subtle tells. A twitch, a shift in weight, anything that might signal intent. Though nothing about the man screamed danger, the actor couldn't shake the unease that crept up his spine. The train speaker crackled to life, announcing their approach to J Street Metrotech station. Keanu buried himself behind the newspaper, but his attention was far from the entertainment section announcing his upcoming blockbuster. Instead, his senses were on high alert, acutely aware of every movement. As they neared the station, the hooded figure gradually moved closer to the walkway between Keanu and the now sleeping Mildred. "Excuse me," the man said politely, and Keanu nodded with a quick, tight smile. The stranger took a seat next to Mildred, still focused on his phone. Keanu's instincts screamed that something was off, but he had no concrete reason to act. He could only watch and wait, hoping his fears were unfounded, as the train hurtled towards J Street Metrotech, unaware of the drama about to unfold. The speaker announced their soon arrival at J Street Metrotech station, the platform coming into view through the grimy windows. In that moment, as if triggered by some unseen signal, chaos erupted within the train car. The hooded man sprang into action with startling speed, lunging for Mildred's purse. Despite her drowsy state, her fingers instinctively tightened around the bag's straps, years of city living having honed her reflexes. A violent tug-of-war erupted in the previously quiet car, the sudden commotion causing other passengers to press themselves against the walls, eyes wide with shock and fear. "Help!" Mildred cried out, her voice strained with effort and fear. "Someone, please!" Keanu's body tensed, ready to intervene, but before he could move, the situation escalated dramatically. The thief, frustrated by Mildred's unexpected resistance, reached into his pocket and pulled out a folding knife. The blade glinted menacingly under the harsh fluorescent lights of the train car. "Back off," the thief snarled, waving the knife threateningly. "Anyone tries to be a hero and the old lady gets it." The other passengers, already hesitant to get involved, now actively shrank away from the confrontation. Muffled gasps and the sound of frantically tapped phone screens filled the air as people tried to discreetly call for help. Keanu's mind raced, assessing the situation. His years of stunt training and fight choreography had prepared him for moments like this. But the stakes here were terrifyingly real. One wrong move could result in serious injury, or worse. Despite the knife threat, Mildred's grip on her purse remained fierce. Her face was a mask of determination, tinged with fear but unyielding. Keanu couldn't help but admire her bravery, even as he worried for her safety. Whatever was in that bag clearly held immense value to her beyond mere monetary worth. The thief's frustration mounted with each passing second. His yanks on the purse grew more violent, eliciting pained cries from Mildred. "Let go, you stupid old bat!" he hissed through clenched teeth. Keanu's muscles coiled, ready to spring into action. He watched the thief's movements intently, looking for an opening, any chance to disarm him without putting Mildred at risk. The train doors slid open, the platform lights casting harsh shadows across the scene. In that moment of distraction, the thief made his move. He raised the knife, clearly intending to slash at Mildred's grip on the purse. Time seemed to slow as Keanu saw the blade descending. Without conscious thought, Keanu launched himself forward. His hand shot out, grabbing the thief's wrist in a move he'd practiced countless times on movie sets. With a swift twist, he forced the knife from the man's grasp, sending it clattering to the floor of the train car. But before Keanu could press his advantage, the train lurched to a complete stop. The sudden movement threw everyone off balance, giving the thief precious seconds to regroup. Keanu stumbled, his back hitting the closed doors on the opposite side of the car. The thief, realizing his window of opportunity was closing, lashed out with desperate violence. He delivered a savage kick to Mildred's leg, the impact reverberating through the train car. Mildred cried out in pain, her body twisting as she lost her footing. Keanu lunged forward again, managing to catch Mildred before she could fall completely. But her iron grip on the purse remained, and the thief used this connection to drag both Mildred and the bag toward the open doors. Time seemed to stretch as Mildred's body twisted, the momentum of the thief's pull sending her tumbling toward the gap between the train and the platform. Keanu's heart leaped into his throat as he saw her begin to disappear into that narrow, deadly space. With a burst of speed born of pure adrenaline, Keanu dove forward. His hand closed around Mildred's wrist just as she slipped over the edge. For a terrifying moment, he felt the full weight of her body dangling precariously above the tracks. The thief, seeing his chance, wrenched the purse free with a final violent tug. He fled into the station, leaving Keanu supporting Mildred's entire weight as her legs swung in the empty space below. "Hold on!" Keanu shouted, his voice strained with effort. "I've got you! Don't let go!" The J Street Metrotech platform was subdued, its dim lighting casting long shadows over the quiet station. Most of the commuters had gathered near the middle of the train, oblivious to the unfolding event at its rear. Only a handful of passengers, Those still in the train car with Keanu witnessed the scene as it began to unravel. Even among those few, fear seemed to hold them in place. Some hesitated, their wide eyes fixed on the precarious struggle before them, but unwilling to intervene. Others slipped out onto the platform, hurriedly moving along as if distancing themselves from the responsibility. A handful called out for help, their voices echoing through the otherwise still station, but no one stepped forward to assist. Keanu, his focus solely on saving her, gripped her firmly, his every muscle taut with effort. In that moment, Keanu Reeves wasn't a world-renowned actor. He was simply a man fighting to keep someone from falling, his identity lost in the urgency of the moment. "Help!" he called out to the stunned onlookers. "I can't pull her up alone." For a moment, it seemed as if no one would step forward. Then, from the crowd, a man in a business suit pushed his way through. "I'm here," he said, kneeling beside Keanu. "What do you need me to do?" "We need to lift her together," Keanu explained quickly. "But we have to be careful, she might be injured." The Good Samaritan nodded, reaching down to grasp Mildred's other arm. Together they began the delicate process of maneuvering her body back onto the platform. Mildred gasped in pain with each movement, the adrenaline that had fueled her resistance now fading, leaving only the stark reality of her injuries. "Easy, easy," Keanu murmured, as much to himself as to Mildred. "We've got you. You're going to be okay." As they finally managed to pull Mildred clear of the gap, Keanu noticed dark stains spreading across the back of her head. Blood. The sight of it on his hands and on the platform floor sent a chill through him. The man who had helped with the rescue looked at his watch, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. He barely noticed Keanu, not even when he apologized in a hurry. "I'm so sorry," he said, genuine regret in his voice. "I have to catch this train. I can't afford to miss it. My job—" Before Keanu could respond, the man slipped away, vanishing into the adjoining cars of the train. Keanu was left alone with Mildred, her trembling frame leaning on him for support. Keanu carefully helped Mildred to a nearby bench, his hands steady but his mind racing. As she sat down, her face pale and eyes wide with pain, Keanu noticed the blood staining his own arms, a stark contrast to the usual calmness he tried to project. He felt the weight of the moment press down on him, but he kept his focus. Kneeling beside her, he pulled out his phone and dialed for an ambulance, his voice calm but urgent as he spoke to the operator. "We need help at J Street Metro Tech Station," he said, glancing at Mildred, trying to assess the extent of her injuries. Her breathing was shallow, and her right arm hung awkwardly by her side, but there was no immediate sign of anything more serious. As the operator assured him that help was on the way, Keanu kept an eye on Mildred, the distant hum of the train continuing on its way, fading as he tuned in for any sign of medical assistance. The minutes felt like hours, but he remained kneeling, his presence a steady anchor for the woman who seemed too dazed to grasp what was happening. It was then that Mildred looked up at him, her eyes clouded with pain but suddenly focusing with recognition. "Are you?" she began, her voice weak. "Are you Keanu Reeves?" The question caught Keanu off guard. Here they were in the aftermath of a violent attack, covered in blood in a subway station, and she was asking about his identity. The surreal nature of the moment wasn't lost on him. "Yes," he answered simply. "I am. But right now that's not important. We need to get you help. What's your name?" "Mildred," she replied. "Mildred Howell." Keanu managed a small smile. "You're a very strong lady, Mildred. That was quite a grip you had on your purse." Mildred chuckled, then winced in pain. "You might think I'm strong, but the truth is, I'm getting slower with age. Soon I'm gonna die." "Don't say that," Keanu said firmly, even as he frantically looked around for any sign of paramedics. "Help is coming. They'll do their best to keep you alive." Mildred's eyes took on a distant look. "You know, I watched my husband die from a fall. The medical team couldn't do anything to save his life." The words hit Keanu hard, reminding him painfully of his own grandmother's final days. He was about to respond when Mildred asked a question that caught him completely off guard. "Tell me, Keanu, why would someone like you care to get into trouble to save an old woman like me?" Keanu's answer came from the heart, surprising even himself with its honesty. "You remind me of my grandmother. She was a fighter too. I'd like to think if she ever needed help, someone would be there for her." Tears welled up in Mildred's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I wish I had a family, a son like you, but I have no one." As Keanu struggled to find words to comfort her, he spotted a subway worker hurrying towards them. He waved, trying to catch the man's attention. "Over here, we need help." The worker's eyes widened as he took in the scene. The blood, the famous actor, the injured elderly woman. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling beside them. Keanu quickly explained about the robbery and Mildred's fall. "We're waiting for an ambulance," he finished. "Can you help us?" The worker nodded, pulling out a radio to call for additional assistance. He then turned to Keanu. "I can stay with her if you want to try and find the thief. He can't have gotten far." Keanu hesitated, torn between the desire to pursue the criminal and his reluctance to leave Mildred's side. "He's been gone for a while now," he said finally. "He might have disappeared into the streets." As they waited for the paramedics to arrive, Keanu's mind raced with possibilities. There had to be a way to track down the thief, to recover Mildred's stolen possessions. And then, like a bolt of lightning, an idea struck him. "Mildred," he said gently, kneeling beside her once more, "your phone, was it in your purse when it was stolen?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, it's a Google phone. Why?" Keanu's voice was steady but urgent, as he gently tried to draw Mildred's attention back to the situation. "Do you remember your Google account information? Your username and password?" he asked, his eyes scanning her face for any sign of recognition. Mildred blinked slowly, clearly disoriented, but Keanu pressed on. "I can track your phone using mine and find out where the thief took it." He kept his tone calm, willing her to focus, hoping she could recall something in the haze of her shock. He needed her to help him help her, and this was the only lead they had. With effort, Mildred managed to recall the details, her voice shaky as she gave Keanu her Google account information. He quickly typed the username and password into his phone, his mind already working on a plan. Every second counted, and he couldn't afford to waste time. As Keanu focused on tracking her phone, a subway worker who had been watching the scene unfold stepped forward. His face was etched with concern, but there was a quiet resolve in his eyes. "Go," he said, his voice firm. "I'll make sure she's taken care of until the paramedics arrive." Keanu hesitated for just a moment longer. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a business card and pressed it into Mildred's hand. "This has my contact information," he explained. "When the paramedics come, make sure they know about it. I'll be back to check on you, I promise." With a final reassuring squeeze of Mildred's hand, Keanu stood. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Then, with purposeful strides, he headed towards the station exit, determination etched on his face. Keanu emerged from the subway station into the quiet Willoughby Street, the cool evening air a stark contrast to the stuffy atmosphere below ground. His mind raced with the possibilities and challenges ahead as he prepared to track down Mildred's stolen belongings. Just as he was about to start his pursuit, his phone rang. The name on the screen made him wince slightly. Patrick, his assistant. With a deep breath, Keanu answered the call. "Keanu, where are you?" Patrick's voice was a mix of concern and exasperation. "The mentoring session at the theater company starts in 20 minutes. Everyone's waiting." For a split second, Keanu felt torn between his professional obligations and the promise he'd made to Mildred. But in his heart, he knew there was only one right choice. "Patrick, I'm sorry, but I need to cancel," Keanu said firmly. "There's been an emergency. A woman was attacked and robbed on the subway. I'm trying to help her recover her stolen belongings." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Are you serious? Keanu, this isn't your responsibility. We can call the police." "I will. I'm taking care of this," Keanu interrupted. "And this is personal now. I made a promise to the woman. I need you to clear my schedule for tomorrow as well, just in case." He could almost hear Patrick's internal struggle, weighing the professional ramifications against Keanu's obvious determination. Finally, his assistant sighed. "All right, I'll take care of it. But please be careful. And call me if you need anything." "Thanks, Patrick, I will." Keanu ended the call, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. Now he could focus entirely on the task at hand. Opening his phone's GPS tracking app, Keanu input Mildred's Google account information. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then a small blue dot appeared on the map, moving steadily away from his current location. "Got you," Keanu muttered, a grim smile spreading across his face. He set off at a brisk pace, following the digital breadcrumbs through the city streets. The urban landscape transformed around him as he moved away from the main thoroughfares into less populated areas. The evening grew darker, shadows lengthening between the pools of light cast by street lamps. As he walked, Keanu's mind wandered back to Mildred. He hoped she was receiving the medical attention she needed. The image of her dangling over the gap between the train and the platform was seared into his memory, along with the strength she'd shown in the face of danger. The GPS signal led him deeper into a downtown area, the streets growing narrower and less welcoming. Keanu found himself alone, the busy subway station feeling like a distant memory. The blue dot on his phone screen finally came to a stop, blinking steadily at the entrance to an alley. Keanu pressed himself against the wall at the alley's mouth, concealed in shadow. His heart raced as he peered around the corner, unsure of what he might find. There, illuminated by the dim, flickering glow of a solitary streetlight, stood the hooded figure from the subway, his movements deliberate and unhurried as he rifled through Mildred's purse. The grimy pavement beneath him became a chaotic tapestry of personal belongings, lipstick tubes rolling into the gutter, a bundle of receipts flitting in the breeze, and a photograph torn from its protective sleeve, its edges curling like dried leaves. Mildred's phone clattered to the ground, screen first, emitting a faint crunch as it made contact with the uneven asphalt. But the thief's attention wasn't on the phone. It was captivated by something else. From the depths of the purse, he pulled out a small transparent box that gleamed faintly under the streetlight, its surface smudged, but unmistakably resembling glass. He turned it over in his hands, curiosity etched into his every movement. The contents of the box shimmered as he cracked it open, and Keanu's breath hitched as the thief's face lit up with a crooked, self-satisfied grin. He held up the prize inside, a gold, diamond-encrusted wedding ring, its stones refracting the sparse light in a kaleidoscope of brilliance. Even from his hidden vantage point, Keanu could see the ring's unmistakable radiance, a poignant contrast to the dingy surroundings. Adrenaline surged through Keanu's veins, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched his phone. This wasn't just about theft. It was an invasion of someone's deeply personal memories, stolen and desecrated on a filthy alley floor. With a deep breath, he forced his voice steady and low as he dialed 911, his fingers moving with quiet precision over the screen. "I've tracked a subway robber to an alley off of..." His eyes darted to the corroded street sign at the intersection, barely visible in the dim light. He relayed the address to the dispatcher, his voice firm despite the growing tension in his chest. "He's still here, going through stolen items. Please send officers immediately, but ask them to approach quietly. We can't risk him slipping away with what he's taken." The seconds stretched into minutes, each one agonizingly slow, as Keanu kept his focus locked on the thief. A mix of anger and determination burned in his chest, fueling his resolve to see this through. His mind raced, recalling a string of subway thefts he'd read about in the news. The boldness, the meticulousness, the timing, it all aligned. Could this man be behind the recent wave of robberies plaguing the city? The possibility only strengthened Keanu's resolve to ensure justice was served. At last, the faintest scuff of footsteps reached his ears, so soft he almost doubted he'd heard it at all. He remained perfectly still, his breath barely stirring the cold night air. Then, emerging from the shadows like spectres, two officers appeared at the opposite end of the alley. Their approach was impeccably silent, their movements calculated and deliberate. Within moments, they had the thief surrounded. The man barely had time to register their presence before he was subdued, his wide eyes betraying his shock. The cocky grin he'd worn just moments ago had vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed expression of disbelief. The officers moved swiftly, securing the scene with practiced efficiency, their gloved hands carefully collecting the scattered evidence, the purse, the phone, and finally, the wedding ring, which they slid into a small evidence bag as though handling a relic of immeasurable value. One officer turned to Keanu, his flashlight casting a soft glow over the actor's face. For a moment, a flicker of recognition crossed the officer's features, but he quickly masked it with professional composure. "Sir, we'll need your statement." Keanu stepped forward, his silhouette emerging from the shadows. His face was calm but resolute, a testament to his steady demeanor under pressure. "Of course," he replied. "I'll tell you everything, but I have one request." His voice dropped slightly, his words deliberate. "Could you keep my involvement confidential? If possible, I'd prefer the report to state the 911 call came from an anonymous source." The officer nodded, his expression understanding. "We'll do our best, Mr. Reeves. Now, if you could start from the beginning." As Keanu recounted the events of the night, his voice carried the weight of the moment, the urgency, the determination, and the faint undertone of relief that it was over. Yet as he watched the evidence being catalogued, his gaze lingered on the wedding ring. It gleamed faintly, a symbol of love and commitment now caught in the aftermath of a crime. A strange sense of unease settled over him. Though the thief was apprehended and Mildred's belongings would be returned, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to make sure Mildred's belongings were secure. The alley was a stark contrast to the bustling subway station where this ordeal had begun. Shadows clung to the brick walls, broken only by the harsh glare of the officers' flashlights. Keanu stood to the side, watching as the police methodically collected evidence and secured the scene. The thief, now in handcuffs, sat on the ground, his earlier bravado replaced by sullen silence. Keanu couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: relief that the man had been caught, anger at the pain he'd caused Mildred, and a strange sense of sadness at the desperation that must drive someone to such acts. As one of the officers carefully bagged Mildred's belongings as evidence, Keanu's eyes were drawn to the wedding ring. Its gold band and sparkling diamond seemed out of place in this gritty alley. He remembered the way Mildred had clung to her purse, willing to risk injury rather than let it go. Now he understood why. "Excuse me," Keanu called out to the officer handling the evidence. "That ring, it belongs to the victim, an elderly woman named Mildred Howell. It has great sentimental value to her. Is there any way she could get it back quickly?" The officer looked up, a sympathetic expression on his face. "I understand, Mr. Reeves, but it's evidence in an ongoing investigation. We'll need to process it first. Once that's done, we'll make sure it's returned to her as soon as possible." Keanu nodded, understanding the procedure, but feeling frustrated nonetheless. He was about to ask more questions when his phone buzzed in his pocket. Pulling it out, he saw an unfamiliar number on the screen. "Hello," he answered, stepping away from the noise of the police activity. "Mr. Reeves?" A female voice, professional but tinged with urgency, came through the speaker. "This is Nurse Chen from Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm calling about Mildred Howell." Keanu's heart skipped a beat. "Is she all right?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Keanu could hear the bustle of the hospital in the background. "Mr. Reeves, I'm afraid Ms. Howell's condition has worsened. We've had to induce a coma due to the severity of her injuries." The words hit Keanu like a physical blow. Memories of his grandmother's final days in the hospital flooded back, bringing with them a wave of emotion he wasn't prepared for. What are her chances?" he managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's too early to say for certain," Nurse Chen replied, "but I thought you should know. She requested specifically for you when she arrived here, and she showed us your card." Keanu's mind reeled at this information. The realization of the trust she had placed in him, a virtual stranger, was overwhelming. "Thank you for letting me know," he said. "I'll be there as soon as I can." Ending the call, Keanu turned back to the police officers. The lead detective was just finishing up his notes. "Detective," Keanu called out, "I need to get to the hospital. The victim, Ms. Howell, her condition has worsened." The detective nodded understanding. "We have your statement, Mr. Reeves. If we need anything else, we'll be in touch, and don't worry. We'll make sure Ms. Howell's belongings are returned to her as soon as our investigation allows." Keanu paused, his gaze shifting briefly to the evidence bag holding the wedding ring. "How long do you think it will take?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with a quiet urgency. "I just want to be sure that Ms. Howell gets her belongings back as soon as possible. That ring, it feels important." The detective considered for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "It's hard to say, Mr. Reeves. Processing evidence and completing the investigation can take some time, especially if this is tied to other crimes, but I'll make sure we expedite the return of any personal items not needed for the case. We'll prioritize it." He offered a reassuring nod. "You did the right thing tonight. That will make all the difference. We have been pursuing this man. You must have heard or read about the subway robber." "Yes, I did. Thank you, officer. I'll be waiting for the updates." With a final glance at the bagged evidence, at the ring that meant so much to Mildred, Keanu turned and hurried out of the alley. The night air felt colder now, or perhaps it was just the chill of worry settling into his bones. Flagging down a passing cab, Keanu gave the driver the hospital address. As the city lights blurred past the window, he found himself gripping Mildred's purse tightly. He had recovered her belongings, but now he feared he might lose Mildred herself. The cab's meter ticked steadily upward as they navigated through the evening traffic. Each red light felt like an eternity, each delay a potential threat to Mildred's chances. Keanu's mind raced with questions and fears. Would she pull through? What if he arrived too late? As the hospital came into view, Keanu steeled himself for what lay ahead. He had started this evening as a simple commuter on a subway train. Now he found himself deeply invested in the life of a woman he barely knew, yet felt inexplicably connected to. Taking a deep breath, Keanu stepped out of the cab and strode towards the hospital entrance. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was determined to face them. For Mildred's sake and for the memory of his grandmother, he would see this through to the end. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor cast harsh shadows as Keanu made his way to the nurse's station. The antiseptic smell and hushed voices brought back memories of his grandmother's final days, a comparison he tried to push from his mind. "Excuse me," he said, approaching the desk. "I'm here about Mildred Howell. I received a call about her condition." The nurse looked up, her eyes widening slightly in recognition. She quickly composed herself, maintaining a professional demeanor. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. Let me check her status for you." The nurse tapped at her computer. "Ms. Howell is in the intensive care unit," the nurse informed him. "Normally we restrict visitors to family members only, but—" She hesitated, clearly torn between hospital policy and the unique circumstances. Another nurse, overhearing the conversation, stepped forward. "No, I was there when they brought her in," she said, her enthusiasm barely contained. "Mr. Reeves, I'm a huge fan. But more importantly, Ms. Howell mentioned you specifically before losing consciousness. She was clutching your business card and said, 'He's all I have left.'" Keanu felt a lump form in his throat at these words. The nurse continued, "Given the circumstances and the paramedics' confirmation of your involvement, we've made an exception to allow you to visit her." Gratitude washed over Keanu. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "How is she doing? Can you tell me more about her condition?" The first nurse's expression grew serious. "Ms. Howell suffered severe head trauma from the fall. There are also fractured ribs and pelvic injuries. We've induced the coma to help alleviate brain swelling." The explanation hit Keanu hard, reminding him painfully of Mildred's earlier words about her husband's fatal fall. "How long do you expect her to be in the coma?" he asked, dreading the answer. "It's hard to say," the nurse replied. "Typically, we'd expect it to last 1 to 3 days. But we've had cases where patients woke up within hours. It really depends on the individual's strength and resilience." Keanu nodded, trying to process this information. "And after she wakes up?" "Recovery can be a slow process," the nurse explained gently. "The doctor will need to assess her brain function and neurological status, as well as her recovery from the fractures. She'll likely need to stay in the hospital for some time." The weight of Mildred's situation settled heavily on Keanu, prompting him to act. "She mentioned she doesn't have any family," he stated with conviction. "I want to take care of her medical expenses and ensure she gets the best care available." The nurses exchanged surprised glances. "That's very generous of you, Mr. Reeves," the first nurse said. "I'll have our administrative staff process that request right away." As the necessary paperwork was prepared, Keanu's mind drifted back to his grandmother. She had always emphasized the importance of helping others, of using one's resources to make a positive difference in the world. He could almost hear her voice. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable. With the financial arrangements settled, a nurse led Keanu to Mildred's room in the ICU. The steady beep of monitors created a rhythmic backdrop as he entered, his eyes immediately drawn to the still form on the bed. Mildred looked small and fragile amidst the tangle of tubes and wires. Her face, peaceful in unconsciousness, bore little resemblance to the fierce woman who had fought so bravely on the subway. Keanu felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. Taking a seat on the small sofa in the room, Keanu pulled out his phone. The screen still showed the Find My Device app he had used to track down the thief. The memory of the ring, now safely recovered but still in police custody, prompted him to action. He exited the room quietly and paced outside the hospital when his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed it was from the police precinct. "Mr. Reeves?" a gruff voice came through the speaker. "This is Detective Martinez. I'm calling about Ms. Howell's belongings. We've completed our initial examination, and they're ready for pickup at the station." Keanu felt a surge of relief. "That's great news, Detective. I'll be there as soon as I can." After informing the nursing staff that he'd be stepping out briefly, Keanu hailed a cab and headed to the police station. At the precinct, Keanu was led to a small room where Detective Martinez waited, a sealed evidence bag on the table before him. "Mr. Reeves," the detective nodded in greeting, "I appreciate your involvement in this case. It's not often we get celebrity assistance in catching criminals." Keanu shrugged off the compliment. "I'm just glad I could help. How's the case progressing?" "We've got him dead to rights," Martinez replied. "Your testimony, along with the evidence we recovered, should be more than enough to put him away for a long time." The detective then gestured to the bag. "Now let's go through Ms. Howell's belongings." Together, they carefully unpacked the items. Keanu felt a wave of relief as each important piece emerged intact. Mildred's wallet with her ID, her phone, though the screen was cracked, and finally, the small jewelry box. With gloved hands, the detective opened the box, revealing the gold and diamond wedding ring. "This seems to be the most valuable item," he noted. "Both monetarily and sentimentally, I'd wager." Keanu nodded, remembering Mildred's fierce determination to protect her purse. It belonged to her late husband. It means everything to her. After signing the necessary paperwork, Keanu carefully repacked Mildred's belongings into her purse. The weight of it in his hands felt significant, as if he were carrying a piece of Mildred's life itself. "Thank you, Detective," Keanu said, shaking the man's hand, "for everything." "Just doing our job, Mr. Reeves. Give Ms. Howell our best wishes for a speedy recovery." With Mildred's purse securely in hand, Keanu returned to the hospital. The halls were beginning to bustle with the night shift change as he made his way back to the ICU. Entering Mildred's room, he found her still unconscious, the steady beep of monitors the only sound. Keanu gently placed the purse on the small table beside her bed, a tangible symbol of his promise to see her through this ordeal. Taking his seat once more, Keanu felt a mix of emotions: relief at recovering Mildred's belongings, concern for her health, and a growing sense of connection to this brave woman he'd met under such extraordinary circumstances. Keanu gently took Mildred's purse, which he had brought from the crime scene, and carefully opened it. He wanted to check the ring and make sure for himself that nothing was broken or chipped. As he searched for the jewelry box, he noticed Mildred's phone at the bottom of the bag, its screen cracked from the rough handling by the thief. Picking up the damaged device, Keanu tried to turn it on, but the battery was dead. He turned to a nearby nurse who was checking Mildred's vitals. "Excuse me, do you have a charging adapter I could borrow?" The nurse nodded, returning moments later with the requested item. As Keanu plugged in Mildred's phone, he couldn't help but feel that this simple act of charging her device was symbolic of his commitment to her recovery. ensuring she remained connected to her world when she woke up. With Mildred's phone charging at the bedside table, Keanu settled back onto the sofa, his own phone in hand. He began searching for news about the subway thief, curious to see if there had been any updates on the case. He found himself watching YouTube videos of CCTV footage showing the man in action in his previous crimes, reading news articles, and scanning through official police reports. As the hours ticked by, Keanu's eyes grew heavy. The adrenaline of the evening had worn off, leaving him exhausted. He drifted off to sleep, a video still playing softly on his phone. It was just before dawn when a slight sound in the room jolted Keanu awake. His eyes snapped open, immediately focusing on Mildred's bed. To his amazement, her eyes were fluttering, struggling to open. Keanu shot to his feet, his pulse quickening as disbelief and relief washed over him. Mildred's early awakening shattered the 1 to 3 day timeline the nurses had cautiously predicted. Glancing at his watch, he noted that barely 10 or 11 hours had passed since her procedure. When her eyes fluttered open completely, they focused on his face with startling clarity, as though seeking reassurance in the midst of her disorientation. "Keanu," her voice was barely above a whisper, rough from disuse. "Mildred, you're awake." He leaned forward, careful not to jostle any of the tubes or wires connected to her. You're really here," Mildred whispered, her voice weak but filled with wonder. Keanu felt a lump form in his throat. "Of course I am. Now rest easy," he replied softly. "I promised I'd come back." Mildred managed a small smile. "I didn't expect you to actually show up. A busy man like you?" "How could I not?" Keanu interrupted gently. "I may be busy, but I couldn't just leave you. Not after everything that happened." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the steady rhythm of the heart monitor. Mildred's eyes darted around the room, taking in her surroundings. Suddenly, a look of panic crossed her face. "My purse, my things, are they—" Carefully, he retrieved Mildred's purse and set it gently on the bed beside her. "I brought this back for you. Everything's there, including—" He hesitated, his words faltering as he realized how intrusive it might sound to admit he'd looked through her belongings. Instead, he offered a reassuring smile. "Well, I made sure nothing was lost." Relief washed over Mildred's features, but it was quickly replaced by a new concern. Mildred's eyes widened in alarm. "The ring? My husband's ring?" "It's safe," Keanu assured her quickly, his tone calm but reassuring. "The police needed it as evidence for their report, but I've already retrieved it from their office and made sure everything is intact." Keanu carefully opened the purse after Mildred's asked his help. He pulled out the small jewelry box and placed it gently in Mildred's hands. With trembling fingers, Mildred opened the box. The sight of the gold and diamond ring inside brought tears to her eyes. "Thank goodness. That ring, it was Berto's, my late husband." The raw vulnerability in her voice touched something deep within Keanu. "I'm so glad we got it back for you, Mildred. I can only imagine how important it is." Mildred looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You know, I've always wondered what it would feel like to have a son who cared this much. Now I know." The words hit Keanu hard, stirring up a complex mix of emotions. "I'm honored you feel that way, Mildred, but surely you have family of your own?" Mildred shook her head slowly, a wistful smile on her face. "Berto and I never had children. We wanted to. Oh, how we wanted to. But it wasn't meant to be." "I'm so sorry," Keanu said, his voice filled with genuine empathy. "That must have been incredibly difficult for both of you." "It was," Mildred admitted. "The doctors had fancy terms for it. Thomas had something called azoospermia, no sperm in his semen. And I had endometriosis, which made it nearly impossible for me to conceive. We tried for years, but—" She trailed off, lost in memories. Keanu listened intently, deeply moved by Mildred's openness and the sadness underlying her words. "That's a heavy burden to carry," he said softly. "But it sounds like you and Berto had a beautiful love, even without children." Mildred nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "We did. He was my soulmate, my best friend. We had 50 wonderful years together before he—" Her voice caught, and she took a moment to compose herself. "Before he fell in the garage. It was such a simple thing, changing the oil in our car. Who would have thought it would end like that?" As they continued to talk about Berto, Keanu noticed Mildred's gaze drifting to her phone on the bedside table. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Mildred sighed, a look of disappointment crossing her face. "I just remembered. The memorial service. I was supposed to meet my church group at Broadway Lafayette Street Station. We were going to drive to St. Patrick's Cathedral together." Understanding dawned on Keanu's face. "For your husband? The 50th anniversary?" Mildred nodded, her expression a mixture of sadness and frustration. "I can't believe I missed it. After all the planning—" Keanu quickly reached for Mildred's phone. "It's not too late," he said reassuringly. "We can let them know what happened. Would you like me to help you send a message?" Gratitude shone in Mildred's eyes. "Would you? My hands are still a bit shaky, and I'm not very good with these newfangled smartphones anyway." With gentle patience, Keanu helped Mildred compose a message to her church group. He typed out her words exactly as she dictated them, explaining the situation while maintaining her dignity. The interaction highlighted their growing connection, as Mildred allowed him to speak on her behalf to her closest community members. As Keanu sent the message, Mildred let out a small sigh of relief. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what I would have done without your help." "It's my pleasure, Mildred," Keanu replied warmly. "I'm just glad I can be here for you." Their conversation continued, flowing naturally from topic to topic. Keanu found himself captivated by Mildred's stories of her younger days working in construction, marveling at the strength and determination that had carried her through life's challenges. "No wonder you held onto that purse so tightly," Keanu said with admiration. "You're one of the bravest people I've ever met, Mildred." Mildred chuckled, then winced slightly at the pain in her ribs. "Oh, I don't know about brave, just stubborn, I suppose. Life toughens you up, especially when you're a woman in a man's world like construction was back then." As they talked and shared laughter, interrupted occasionally by Mildred's pained gasps when her injuries made themselves known, Keanu felt a deep sense of connection growing between them. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring them together, two souls finding unexpected kinship in the wake of a crisis. As the morning wore on, Keanu noticed Mildred's eyelids starting to droop, fatigue clearly setting in. "I should have let the nurses know you're awake way earlier," he said gently. "They'll want to check on you." Mildred nodded, stifling a yawn. "I suppose you're right, though I hate to end our conversation. It's been so lovely talking with you, Keanu." With a reassuring smile, Keanu stood and made his way to the door. "Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right outside while they examine you." In the hallway, Keanu flagged down a passing nurse. "Excuse me, Ms. Howell is awake. I thought you should know." The nurse's eyes widened slightly. "Already? That's remarkable. I'll get the doctor right away." As the medical team filed into Mildred's room, Keanu waited patiently outside, his mind replaying their conversation. He was struck by Mildred's resilience, her ability to find humor and grace even in the face of pain and loss. After what seemed like an eternity, the doctor emerged from the room, a look of cautious optimism on his face. "Mr. Reeves, Ms. Howell is asking for you." Keanu re-entered the room to find Mildred looking tired but alert. The doctor followed him in, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Howell's recovery rate is quite remarkable," the doctor explained. "Her early awakening from the induced coma is a very positive sign. However, we'll need to keep her under observation for a while longer. The injuries to her ribs and pelvis will take time to heal." Mildred listened to the doctor's words with a stoic expression, but Keanu could see the flicker of worry in her eyes. As the medical staff filed out, promising to return for more tests later, Keanu settled back into the chair beside Mildred's bed. "How are you feeling?" he asked gently. Mildred attempted a smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, you know, tougher than I look, remember? Though I must admit, I don't bounce back quite as quickly as I used to." Her attempt at humor through obvious pain caught Keanu off guard, but he merely smiled, now understanding this was simply who Mildred was. Someone who faced life's challenges with grace and resilience. "Keanu, I want you to know how much this means to me. Your kindness, your company, you're truly like a son to me." Mildred spoke up, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Keanu felt a lump form in his throat at her words. "Mildred, I'm honored that you feel that way. And I want you to know that this isn't just a one-time thing. If you'll let me, I'd like to stay in touch, to be there for you even after you leave the hospital." Tears welled up in Mildred's eyes. "You mean that? You're not just saying it because you feel obligated." "I mean every word," Keanu assured her. He reached for his phone, setting up a new contact. "Here, let me add my personal number to your phone. You can reach me anytime, day or night." As Keanu input his information into Mildred's phone, he felt a sense of purpose settling over him. This unexpected friendship, born out of crisis, had the potential to be something truly special. "There," he said, handing the phone back to Mildred. "Now you're just a call or text away from reaching me, and I promise I'll check in regularly to see how you're doing." Mildred took the phone, her eyes widening as she noticed the cracked screen for the first time. "Oh my," she exclaimed, running her fingers gently over the spiderweb of cracks. "I hadn't realized it was damaged. That thief must have been quite rough with my things." Keanu nodded sympathetically. "I'm afraid so, but don't worry about that now. The important thing is that it still works. We can look into getting it repaired or replaced once you're feeling better." Mildred clutched the phone to her chest, damaged screen and all, in a gesture that seemed to encompass both the device and the connection it represented. "You're right, of course. It's what's inside that truly matters. Both the phone and the people in our lives. Thank you, Keanu. I don't know how I can ever repay you for your kindness." Keanu shook his head, smiling warmly. "There's no need for repayment, Mildred. Your friendship is more than enough." He paused, remembering something. "You know, my grandmother used to say that random acts of kindness can form the most lasting connections. I think she was right." Mildred laughed softly, her eyes twinkling despite the pain she was clearly still in. "Your grandmother sounds like she was a very wise woman. I wish I could have met her." "Me too," Keanu said softly. "I think you two would have gotten along famously." As the afternoon sun cast a warm glow through the hospital room window, Keanu felt a profound sense of gratitude. What had started as a terrifying ordeal had blossomed into something beautiful, a friendship that transcended age and circumstance. He knew there would be challenges ahead. Mildred's recovery would be long and potentially difficult. But he was committed to being there every step of the way, honoring both the resilient woman before him and the memory of his grandmother, who had taught him the value of compassion. In that moment, as Mildred's gentle laughter filled the room despite her pain, Keanu knew that this unexpected detour in his life was exactly where he was meant to be. The story that had begun on a crowded subway car was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning.